Hello, it's Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. I am down in Arizona in the Scottsdale auctions, January 2020, and I'll be previewing some cars from the various auction houses. I'm at Russo Steele now, and later I'll go to Bonham's, Gooding, and RM. I thought for my own YouTube channel, I thought what could be interesting, or an interesting series of videos, would be for me to do a critical assessment on some of the auction cars before they cross the block. With the idea that, or with the aim that, to shed some light on why certain years and models of cars can have vastly different auction results. Even if they look the same in the photos, and even if the catalog descriptions and so on seem fairly similar, one particular car can sell for a multiple of another. And why is that? And you can't tell just by looking at the auction. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a close-up look on a couple cars, pick out the things that I think matter, the differences between, let's say what I consider a good car and a bad car, and then take a stab at the valuations. I won't publish them before the auction, so I'll publish the videos after the auction, and then we'll have the auction result, and well, we'll just have some fun guessing. Okay, so right behind me you see a Rolls Royce Silver Cloud 3. This is the last version with the quad headlamps, and we've got another earlier Bentley in the same tent. So I'm going to go over both these cars and do a little scrutiny. Now this is the caveat here is that I don't have access to the mechanical records or history, and they probably would frown on me if I started like opening up doors and looking at the hoods and so on. So it's mostly just a cosmetic assessment. But I'll turn this camera around and then let's see where we go. All right, so these cars, perhaps more than just about anything, have the potential to be really good or really bad. The cost of restoring one of these cars, if you gave it to a restorer, would be several $100,000. Yet the value of the cars, the best one in the world, probably wouldn't hit $150,000. And there's lots of these cars for dirt cheap, and they're dirt cheap for a reason. Virtually anything you do on the car is going to be fiendishly expensive. And when you see a car that's got fresh paint, at an auction, well, it really deserves some close scrutiny. Okay, so what am I talking about here? Well, I'll just talk about some of the things that jump out at me, and let's just look at the paint. First of all, somebody went through the trouble to paint the car, but not replace the weather stripping. Now, if you don't do that and the car gets wet, it dries up, the water goes inside the car and takes out your wool headliner and starts rotting the wood, and then you've got even more problems. So the fact that somebody painted the car and didn't replace the seal is a red flag to me. You see some of the other parts are heavily corroded. There's prep issues here. We see just sort of evidence of poor prep just about everywhere. We see that some of the seals are dried up, some of them aren't replaced. And we see some pitting in the chrome work. Again, not the end of the world in itself, but there looks to be no effort to do a thorough job on this car. You can see some delamination of this, and I'm not sure what's going on with that. It looks like you can see the masking line, and it looks like they just stuck on a rubber seal. In the paint, I don't know if you can see that, but there's all kinds of prep work, rust bubbles. You can see these sanding marks. What happens is when you put the filler in the car, the filler will, and then you paint it, the filler will evaporate and shrink, and then, I don't know if you can see this, it's not very, the cameras aren't very good, well maybe they're a little bit, and you can see these prep marks in the paint. Okay, so a great restoration will have the paint sit in primer for a while, and all that stuff will evaporate. Going around the car, there's also other instances of where the paint is flat. There's all kinds of dust in the paint, too many to go through. The door gaps don't look to be bad in this car, but the paint quality is very poor. I always look at tires as kind of a litmus test. These ones look too small, and they're hand-cooped tires, which might not be the end of the world. I'm not sure they're too small, but they look a little bit too small to me. And you know, on a car like this, to spend the $500 a tire and get a, you know, an Avon tire, or whatever the correct reproduction is, the good restorations will have that, and the bad ones will just get sort of whatever fits on the rim. And we can see, you know, there's all kinds of other marks in the paint. Now, it's an old car. You know, I don't know why you'd paint the car and then just leave that. In short, this car has inside, let me just take a look at this here. The wood looks to be nicely refinished. The leather, it's got a couple holes in it, but it looks to be unpainted, thankfully. So there's a couple good things about the car. The interior is all right. We can see some staining in the rear wool headliner and the sides. Now that is very expensive to replace, okay? And that's why you don't want to fool around with seals on the windows. But overall, I would say, you know, this car at an auction where you kind of have to make an instant decision would be deeply frightening. A great Silver Cloud 3 owned by a Rolls Royce club member with a good history. There's a great forum for these cars where, you know, many of these cars are already known, and there's all kinds of experts that weigh in if you need some help, the Rolls Royce Owners Club, etc. A great example might be 100 US for a really great one. Projects are 5 or 10. And this one I don't think is, you know, presumably it runs, but I would say I just wouldn't give it any more than $20,000 to $25,000 on this car. Let's go look at another one now. All right, so this is a Bentley Mk VI, and it would have been the predecessor to the Silver Cloud and a close relative of the R-Type, which I've also owned and is on my site. The R-Type had a little bit of a bigger engine, 4.6 versus I think 4.2, and a different treatment in the rear, which gave it a larger boot. In addition to the standard steel-bodied cars, there were coach-built cars, and they can vary widely in price. And we should also mention the R-Type Continental, which are $1 million cars. Okay, so this is a Mk VI Bentley. It's a coach-built car, Freestone Webb, okay, an all-aluminum body. So over the standard steel saloon, the coach-built cars might be anywhere from a 25 to 100% value increase, okay, because, you know, they're made in much fewer quantities. Okay, so right away the paint on this car is at a completely different level. I don't see any sand in it. I don't see any fish eyes. I don't see any corrosion. I don't see. We have some fine pinstriping. We have appropriate tires for the car. It looks like it has some trouble here. I'm not too disappointed with that. It's an aluminum car. The chassis and the body is pretty flexible on these things, so that gives rise to the paint cracking. I look at the rest of the door gaps and they look nice. There's the odd imperfection. You can see the traffic heater there. Again, some cracking. I'm not too worried about that. I see a few little imperfections in this fender, but overall, you know, the paint, some more cracking in the edges. Again, that's pretty hard to avoid. You know, so it looks like this car had a quality respray from a specialist. you know, the paint might be 5 years old, or might be even older than that. But you can tell it was done to a very high standard, even shut lines, and it looks lovely. Okay, so it's a right-hand drive car. All Mark 6s were manual, and then you can, I don't know if you can see that, but the gear shift is just down there by the driver's right knee. They've got a badge from the San Diego Concours in 1991, and that's a new leather, which looks to be nice, and the headliner looks to be nice. It looks like it's a brand new interior. The wood's been refinished, and that would have been extremely expensive. All the chrome seems to be good, and you know, it's a lovely old thing. This is kind of an old man's car. It doesn't really have the, most people would think it doesn't really have the grace of the silver clouds. It looks like a pre-war car, and in fact this car was the first car that Rolls and Bentley, same company, built after World War II, and they launched it a Bentley, not a Rolls Royce, because, you know, Britain was in an austerity period, and they figured that the Rolls was a bit over the top. So the Bentley Mk VI was the first car the Rolls Bentley group produced after World War II, and it was the same, virtually the same as the pre-war 2025 in many ways. Okay, I'm simplifying it, but there you go. So the point I'm making is it's a bit more of a frumpy old man's car to many people's opinion, not mine, because it has a manual gearbox, and it's actually kind of a sporting car to drive, and I actually prefer it to the Silver Cloud with the automatic. And it's a little bit more engaging, and it's a lovely thing. I mean, I really enjoyed my Type R, R-Type, and they're just delightful to drive in, delightful to tour in, and it's just a special old thing. Now, it's a right-hand drive Mark VI Bentley, coach built with no reserve, in the middle of an Arizona auction with a bunch of pickup trucks and hot rods and God knows what. It's a hell of a risk for this guy to put this in no reserve. I would not do that, especially for a nice car. I mean, you put the no reserve car in because, frankly, you just want to get out of it and never want to see it again for whatever reason. So this is a risk. I would say that the car is probably worth, you know, providing the mechanical matches the exterior, which I don't know, but you know, I'm going to say 60,000 US would be, I think, a fair number. This is just off the cuff, by the way. I haven't really done my research. You know, I don't know that, but that's what I think, around 60 grand. But at auction, this could be a real buy for somebody, because you know, it's no reserve, it could slip through the cracks, and this car might just sell for $30,000 or $35,000, which would be a steal. Okay, which should be a steal. The best, I mean, the Bentley R-Type Continentals are $1 million or $1.5 million. The coach-built Bentley Mk VI cabriolets can be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. The regular Mk VI, you know, probably really great ones are 40 for a standard one. So this is a 50% improvement over a Mk VI, but more than that, not a lot of money if you can buy this for 35 or 40 grand and drive it around. It's a beautiful looking thing. Okay, so that's my assessment on two Rolls Bentley cars at the Russo Steele auction. We'll see what they sell for, and like I said, I'll see how close I am. Please like it and subscribe. Lawrence Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. Thank you.